Enactment of the slave trade that Ghana did on Juneteenth was an inappropriate way to observe Juneteenth.
Pain, emotion, and history come alive at the Osu Castle in Accra.
Whether they want to blame Ghana or not, most of them probably not going to blame them like that. They'll blame the white man for doing it. And so that is a part of us, the part that we lost. So now them being in Ghana connects that which they lost and celebrating that who they were back home.
Students from the University of Ghana deliver a powerful performance, one that captures the anguish and resilience tied to the slave trade. The moment marks Juneteenth, the U.S. holiday that commemorates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans in 1865, when the last enslaved people were finally declared free. But here in Ghana, it's more than just a remembrance. It's a call to action. African and Caribbean leaders watched on, visibly moved, as they pushed for something bigger: apologies, reparations, and a more just future for Africans and people of African descent worldwide.
And by him speaking like that, that lets me know that this is all a scam. This is all a play. Because what Juneteenth got to do with Caribbeans? What Juneteenth got to do with Africans? They play no parts in none of that at all. So that just let me know this whole thing was them just using Juneteenth and trying to get a bag. That's all it was. Them people don't care about us. And that's why we got to continue to delineate people.
A major controversy is brewing after a Juneteenth event in Ghana featured a dramatic reenactment of the transatlantic slave trade. Now, while some people see it as a powerful way to remember history and connect Africa with the African diaspora, others are strongly disagreeing. Okay, they don't agree what this is all about. This is happening. Many Black Americans argue that Juneteenth is about freedom, it's about emancipation and celebration, not reenacting, slavery. But some are even questioning whether countries outside the United States like this Ghana should participate in June at all. So, yeah, while Pan-African supporters say the holiday has a broader connection to African history, I mean, this debate is getting interest from both sides, but within the Black community of in America, Black communities. So, did Ghana miss Juneteenth or did they honor Juneteenth? Let's watch the video. Let's find out what happened. And at the end, we can have, views of those. We need to break down why are people supporting this? Why are, others within Black community in America not supporting this? And at the end, we can have one statement from someone within the video who comes with a judgment between the two. And I think, we're gonna love it. Let's dive into this. And if this is your first time, please subscribe for more of this. Otherwise, I'll see you at the end for more commentaries.
This is why Black Americans be saying they don't want the diaspora celebrating Black American holidays, because y'all don't be doing the appropriate things. You don't even understand the holidays that you are celebrating. Juneteenth is a holiday about freedom. It's about the day that the last of the slaves got freed in Texas, even though slavery had been abolished since January 1st. The only thing that should be being depicted on Juneteenth is freedom, celebration, gratitude, happiness, not sorrow, not fear, not slavery. That is an inappropriate way to celebrate Juneteenth. And in my opinion, is a form of spell work. I don't care. Y'all ain't never gonna agree with it, but ritualizing, depicting acts of slavery and suffering on a day that's supposed to be about freedom is a reversal of energy. I don't care. That's how I feel. Y'all had all year to talk about slavery. Y'all can talk about slavery any day of the fucking year. Why choose the one day that's about Black American freedom? I don't like that. It's not appropriate. I think it's perfectly fine for people of the diaspora to celebrate Black holidays, but y'all have to observe them how they're supposed to be celebrated. You can't make them about you. You can't change the meaning of the holiday. You need to depict them as they're supposed to be depicted. Juneteenth is Black American 4th of July. It's an Independence Day. It's a day about freedom. It's not about slavery. Imagine depicting the Boston Massacre on fucking July 4th. Something to do with the Holocaust on one of them Jewish holidays. It's that disrespectful. I'll just have to be socially aware, and I'm not convinced that you're not, right? I think that the ignorance is purposeful. I do. Because to me, this just completely missed the mark. And of course, all the white people are like, oh, wow, like this is so, because white people love depictions of slavery. My black ass hates them. Hates them. White people have been getting off on slavery depictions for fucking decades now. It's their favorite fucking pastime. I'm tired of seeing depictions of slavery. Especially on a holiday like Juneteenth. I don't care. It does not make sense. If y'all really want to have community with black Americans as diasporic people, you're going to have to learn about our history. You can say, oh, well, you don't know anything about our history. You're right. But I'm also not out there celebrating Ghanaian holidays. Period.
So the anger should not be directed at the African country. This is something that the people in the community that have already moved there have told Ghanaians. So then they put their spin on it and it becomes Africanized, because you do have foundational black Americans who are Pan-African. And this is where the rubber meets the road. When you see this celebration, the Ghanaian kids dancing, singing to a Pan-African, that is a part of Juneteenth, because it tells the entire story of Juneteenth to a Pan-African. I know the brothers and sisters from the hashtag hardbody guys on FBA on Twitter is not going to agree with me. Listen, brother, I see your point of view because I saw what you saw there. But take it from a Pan-African. The Pan-African brother from the Black American community, African American community, hashtag FBA, they understand that was important for us to be liberated in 1865. But they're going to trace that lineage before that time, back to Africa, how we got into slavery. Whether they want to blame Ghana or not, most of them probably not going to blame them like that. They'll blame the white man for doing it. And so that is a part of us, the part that we lost. So now them being in Ghana connects that which they lost and celebrating that who they were back home. That's how a Pan-African can understand that version of Juneteenth. Whereas somebody in Oakland, St. Louis, Detroit, having the barbecue, going to the Hidden History Museum, or cannot understand it. But I would not blame African countries. Any African country that you see getting involved in black history, getting involved in Juneteenth, that's black Americans, your people, telling African governments to target us.
So I've been sitting with this whole like Juneteenth debacle and debate for, Juneteenth or whatever. And everybody been going back and forth like we don't want to hear no outside music outside of African American culture, no Afro beats, no reggae, no soca, no. And I was just kind of like, because of my own selfish desires, I was like, what's wrong with a little Afro beat? And then I thought about it. Back in March for Ghana Independence Day, when everybody went to Houston, the Ghanaians was very specific how they didn't want Nigerian DJs and they didn't want to hear Nigerian music. And when I say that whole weekend, the Ghanaians got their music. They demanded that shit, they got that shit, and we was got out every single function. But they got it. So yeah, that mean it needs to be a nuck if you buck, can we talk before I let go type of day. Happy Juneteenth, y'all.
Let's be honest with ourselves for a second. Is this performance really about celebrating Juneteenth and commemorating emancipation and the freed slaves in the United States of America? Or is this about furthering the talk about reparations and Ghana being the one who is deserving of reparative justice, although they were an active participant in the slave trade and the atrocity that led to the transatlantic slave trade throughout the Americas? I really don't see how this is celebrating Juneteenth. Juneteenth is an American holiday, and it's fine. I'm not saying that other people can't celebrate with us. If you want to celebrate with Black Americans for Juneteenth, that's a great thing. More power to you. My thing is, let's not shift focus. I mean, once again, it's an American holiday and it celebrates emancipation, the freedom of the slaves. I just find it to be very interesting that they decided to kind of do this performance, for Juneteenth after this whole talk about reparations with the UN and everything like that. To me, it kind of seems like a gimmick that's trying to further, getting sympathy and empathy so that they can further this conversation about Ghana being deserving of reparations. That's what it looks like to me. I'm just saying it's a very convenient time to have such a performance?
Watching Ghana celebrate Juneteenth was very entertaining and funny, y'all. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Seeing them do the slave reenactments was funny. Seeing the president get the dates wrong about when Juneteenth ended was funny. But you know what topped it all off for me? Was when I saw Marcus Garvey's son, Julius Garvey, speak at the Juneteenth festival. First and foremost, I ain't know Marcus Garvey had sons that were still living. And the sad part about it, as soon as I saw Marcus Garvey's son, the first thing I thought about was, damn, man, that's the seed of a liar. That's the seed of a scammer. That's the seed of a failure. His daddy was a failure. His daddy never touched anything in Africa. Now you got this man speaking. Then listen to the speech. It sounded scammy like his daddy. You get what I'm saying? Only thing he talked about was Africa, Caribbean islands, the AU, and CARICOM. That ain't got nothing to do with black Americans. And by him speaking like that, that lets me know that this is all a scam. This is all a play. Because what Juneteenth got to do with Caribbeans? What Juneteenth got to do with Africans? They play no parts in none of that at all. So that just let me know this whole thing was them just using Juneteenth and trying to get a bag. That's all it was. Them people don't care about us. And that's why we got to continue to delineate people. That's why delineation is very important. I don't care if you're indigenous, and even though a lot of indigenous claim a lot of these Caribbean people, but I don't care if you're indigenous. I don't care if you call yourself Black American. I don't care if you call yourself FBA, Solon, or even the AA word. I don't care. As long as you're descendants of emancipated people, we got to peep the play, y'all. We can't keep being dumb to these people. Peep the play. These people do not give a damn about us. We are not a part of the diaspora at all. So we're going to have to get it together. But I'm going to play the clip of Marcus Garvey's son talking, though. That was so funny to me. But anyway, salute.
Able to lead more than 6 million people along the path of Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. His philosophy and his ideology influenced, of course, your own first president, Kwame Nkrumah. So I'm indeed happy to be here to see that your current president is walking in the footsteps of Kwame Nkrumah, who walks in the footsteps of my father. I represent, in some sense, civil society organizations in the United States of America. As you know, we're not represented by government. But the governments of the Caribbean have done wonders, and I would certainly, your relationships between CARICOM and the AU and different African countries is exemplary. And I'd like to congratulate Prime Minister Motley for inaugurating.
I want to piggyback off of what this great sister said. It's not even Africa-centered. It is Ghana-centered. They want, in the United States of America, they want on Juneteenth for you to celebrate those who sold Africans. That is what's infuriating about it. And I've watched several videos of hers about this. And I just want to follow up because she's leaving out a big part of it. In the United States of America, this comes from Galveston, Texas. But African selling ancestors, those who are the ancestors of those who sold human beings, want to celebrate Juneteenth. Please stop leaving that part out. Please. There was no country on the African continent more prolific than trading human beings than Ghana. Yes, it wasn't called Ghana then. So this is the part she keeps leaving out, and I wanted to say it loud. Ghana is celebrating Juneteenth in Ghana. No, they're not. They are having a reparations meeting 7 years to the day that Black Americans went to Congress in the United States of America asking for reparations. It was June 19th, 2019, when Black Americans had a reparations hearing in Congress. It is 7 years to the day. Ghana now is trying to take back their apology for their ancestors selling human beings into slavery, which they enslaved their own fellow tribes, and then decided, hey, let's get more money for them by selling them to the Europeans. Let's get more money for the people that we were already capturing. It is May 2026, and there are still 15 violent and deadly tribal conflicts in Ghana. Ghana has a U.S. military base on Accra International Airport. Ghana has an FBI attaché headquarters in Accra, Ghana. They have the NYPD in Accra, Ghana. And now they have a European Union military agreement in Ghana. So they are still in the business of destabilizing Africa, selling out Africans, and they want you to celebrate Juneteenth and talk about reparations. They want money. They want money for selling human beings into slavery. Say it loud. Juneteenth in Ghana is not about a celebration. It's about how are they going to divvy up the reparations that they want for selling human beings into slavery. So that is a double, triple slap in the face. You sold human beings, now you want reparations, and now you want to have Juneteenth to divvy up them reparations. Fuck Ghana.
Maybe some of you who don't know what Juneteenth is, the enslaved in Texas were told they were free for 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation freed them. They'd watch in their churches and they'd pray for freedom to come. And it finally did. When General Gordon Granger and 7,000 colored troops from New Jersey and New York made their way to Galveston, Texas. And he read General Order Number 3 that said all slaves are free. When those people came in from their labor and somebody read that to them, we started celebrating, and we've been celebrating ever since. Juneteenth is not a Texas thing. It's not a black thing. We're talking about freedom for everyone.
Welcome back. Now we have this debate which has erupted after a Juneteenth event in Ghana featured the reenactment of the transatlantic slave trade. As I said, some black Americans feel the event was disrespectful, completely missed the meaning of Juneteenth. Others believe Africa has every right to be involved in this because the story of slavery did not just begin in America, it began from Africa. So let's break this one down point by point, bit by bit, because this conversation is getting very emotional and so controversial. But at the end of the day, this should not divide us, okay? It shouldn't divide us. Now, point number one, some black Americans believe the Juneteenth belongs to specifically black Americans. Of course, we cannot say they are wrong, but that's their point. Their argument is actually very simple. Juneteenth commemorates the day enslaved people in Texas finally learned they were free. Okay? It is a celebration of freedom, according to them. Celebration of liberation, survival, some sort of victory. So when they see people acting out scenes of slavery on that day as Juneteenth, they feel the focus is being shifted away from freedom and put back onto suffering. Okay, so that's their argument. I mean, imagine celebrating Independence Day and somebody decides to focus on the war, not the freedom that followed. So for many people, that's exactly how they see this situation. They believe Juneteenth should be about joy, about family gathering, about some party, you're celebrating, about culture, music, and remembering how far black Africans have come, not reenacting chains, auctions, some beatings, shouting at people, and, slavery. So whether you agree or disagree, that's how many people are viewing this. Point number two, let's look at some people who are criticizing this. Now, some critics believe Ghana should not be at the center of Juneteenth celebration at all. Now, this is where the debate becomes even more heated. You see, some people argue that Ghana and other African countries have their own holidays, their own historical events, and their own, commemorations. So, yeah, therefore, they believe Juneteenth should remain focused on the descendants of enslaved people in the United States, like the FBAs, fundamental black Americans. Some even argue that bringing in discussions about reparations, Pan-Africanism, Caribbean politics, and the African governments changes the original meaning of the holiday, the meaning of Juneteenth. in their view, the event stops, being about Black American emancipation and becomes something entirely different. So that's why some people reacted so strongly to this, because they feel the holiday is being redefined without their consent. But now, who is the owner of this slave history between Africans and the American? Before we get to point 3, for me, I feel like Africa is the book 1 of the story. America is the book 2 of the story. That's before we get to point number 3. Because the slavery began from Africa. And it ended in America. So I'll talk more about that. Now, let's go to point number 3. Point number 3, but there is another side of this conversation, of course. Many Pan-African supporters believe Africa and Black America cannot be separated from this story. Their argument is that slavery did not begin in America, like I'm saying. It began, before the ships crossed the Atlantic Oceans. It began before the plantations. It began before Texas. So if Juneteenth represents end of slavery's long journey, then understanding the beginning of that journey really matters, okay? Where that story really comes from as part 1 of the story. They argue that you cannot tell the complete story, the full story of, Black Americans without mentioning where they're coming from, without mentioning Africa. Because Africa is where the ancestors originally came from. So Africa is where families were separated. Africa is where communities were disrupted. Africa is where the story started. Therefore, they believe Africans have every right to remember and reflect on that history, not because they want to take over Juneteenth. If they want to do that, then that would be wrong again. But that's the argument, because they see themselves as part of the same, historical story. Like I'm saying, it's something that started from Africa. It's something that ended in America. So point number 4, the idea that the Pan-Africanism is influencing this debate. Let's look at it. Now, Pan-Africanism is the belief that the people of African descent around the world share a common history and destiny. Those people who believe in the capability of Africa, those people who believe that the Africans, they are the little ancestors, they are the little descendants. They are Africans are the chosen people, the strong people. They're just being only that there are people who don't want to value Africa, but in Africa there is power in Africa. So that's more about Africanism, Pan-Africanism. Now, according to this, it does not mean everybody agrees on everything, but it does mean many people see connections between Africans, those people who are in Africa, and African Americans, those people who are in America, Caribbeans, and other Black communities around the world. So from this perspective, Juneteenth is not just about one location, like we're talking of America. No, it is about the victory of people who survived one of the greatest injustices in human history. So when Pan-African supporters see Ghana taking part in this Juneteenth by doing what they did, they don't necessarily see outsiders joining somebody else's history or somebody else's putting himself in a certain story. No, they see relatives remembering a shared history. Again, not everybody agrees with that, or everybody should agree with that. It all depends on how you are looking at this. But that is the reasoning behind their support. Point number 5, here is where I personally think this discussion gets so interesting, because I think it's like the judge between the two sides of the story, like the judgments between those who support and those who don't support. Now, at the end of the day, one of the speakers made a point that stood out to me. This woman at the end, let's just look at it for 3 seconds.
Juneteenth is not a Texas thing. It's not a Black thing. We're talking about freedom for everyone.
I hope you heard it. She said Juneteenth is not just like a Texas thing. She said Juneteenth is not just a Black thing. She said Juneteenth is about freedom for everyone. And honestly, there is something powerful about that idea from this grandma. You see, because when slavery was abolished in America, the effects were felt far beyond America. Now, think about this one in this way. I have this example. If a product, whatever product you can think of, whatever product you can think of, if a product is being produced in one place, like in Ghana, for example, but the only buyers are somewhere else, like in America, what happens when the buyers stop buying? What happens when America stop buying that? We are saying that product, the only buyer is in Europe, the only buyer, nobody else will buy. So what happens if those people stop buying? Eventually, production will stop. The same principle can be applied to slavery. One major country has begun abolishing slavery and rejecting the slave system. The demand started disappearing. Okay, those people who were capturing people in Africa, they had, business, big business, because in America, in Africa, in Europe, there are people who are willing to buy that. Okay, and as a demand disappeared, the entire system began, collapsing. So in many ways, the end of slavery affected both sides of the Atlantic. That's why I believe this history cannot be completely, be separated. It's like in Africa, it's part 2 of the history. It's part 1 of the history. In America, it's part 2. Africa has part of the story. Black Americans have part of the story. The Caribbean has part of the story. Different chapters, but the same book. I can just put it. Okay, it's just the first edition, second edition. Or it's the same book, just the different pages. In Africa, history tells us where people, like we are taken away. Okay, in African books. Okay, in our schools, we also talk about history. Okay, about slavery. But where the books end is where these people were taken out of Africa. What happens there? Our books are silent because it's another territory. All those things were not documented back to Africa. Now we are learning it from American perspective. In America, history tells us what happened after they arrived there. So one story may begin where another story ends. It's like America takes away American book. It simply takes away from what African book or African story ended. Because in American story, you can't hear anything like which villages were these people taken exactly. Okay, which chiefs were selling these people. In Africa, when you come to Africa, you hear about Chief Imponda. You hear about some tiers who are common. They were good at selling these people. Those ones cannot be found in the American history. So I hope you get what I mean. So together they form a complete picture. They form a complete book. That doesn't mean everyone must agree on how Juneteenth should be observed. People will continue debating like that. But what cannot be denied is that the history of slavery connects multiple generations, multiple countries, and multiple communities. And perhaps that is why this conversation has become so emotional, so controversial. But let's not make it something divisive, okay? It shouldn't divide us. Because for many people, this is not just a history. It's identity. It's some sort of memory. It's a story that, still matters even today. So anyway, that's my take. That's how I had to break down this story. I don't know what you observe from this. What's your take on this? Whatever your take is, I respect it. I really respect it because, some of these things depends on how you understand it and how you want it to be. How would you like Juneteenth to be? Nobody should tell you what to do. I hope your views really matter. So can you share your views in the comment section? I would greatly appreciate to learn from you as well. If this was your first time to come to this channel, please subscribe to join more of these discussions. Otherwise, see you next time, and I'm proud of you.